Hello, welcome to the very first program of Think Sustainable program series. In this program, we'll talk about the present challenges regarding sustainability, and we'll try to explore solutions worldwide. And let me talk a little bit about who is behind this project. So it's clearly Sustainability Steps Association. And I'd like to give you a brief information on them. So Sustainability Steps Association carries out sustainability projects in order to create awareness on not only problems, that's the nicest part, because they are trying to create awareness on solutions to help both individuals and organizations so that they can become a part of the solution themselves. And so it aims to promote sustainability studies and projects. And for that, in order to do that, it focuses on 3 themes, which are communication, corporate volunteering, and networking. Of course, within the framework of Sustainable Development Goals, the SDGs. In order to do so, it welcomes and calls for other organizations worldwide to collaborate on future projects. So I'm a little bit excited, by the way. I hope you would excuse me for that. You know, this is my very first experience too. As a sneak peek into what's possible as a solution, our program today will take only 45 minutes. And in the last quarter, we'll try to answer your questions on the chat box. So today we're with Jodie Harburt, co-founder of Cooking Up Dialogue. Jodie, welcome once again. And thank you, for being with us today. I'm super excited to talk about Cooking Up Dialogue and how it helps create bridges among individuals. So I'd like to get started with Terra Madre as an umbrella network. Can you please tell us a little bit about Terra Madre and also Slow Food Movement?
Yeah, thank you first of all, Gül, for hosting me here today, and congratulations to Sustainable Steps Association for this new venture, this Think Sustainable. It's a great idea, and I wish you the best of luck with it. So congratulations. To your question, Terra Madre is a platform that emerged from the slow food movement. And it basically provides a platform for initiatives, small initiatives, and small food producers. I think they've been around since 2004. And their motto is our food, our planet, our future. And I think that basically, it sums it up really.
So what about its working structure? How does it help the other collectives and individuals to cooperate?
Well, actually, I think this is a good little micro example. It's like this. I mean, right here on the screen, there's you and I. But behind us, there is the Slow Food organization, Fatma Denizci of Slow Food Şile Palamut. And I worked together on a Cooking Up Dialogue project. She hosted us in the Şile villages. And after that, and she had her own personal firsthand experience, she then joined us as a participant in another group. And she, with this firsthand experience, then thought it would be great to see this Cooking Up Dialogue project on the Terra Madre platform. So she created that network or forged that link for us. And then while we were having these conversations, we thought it would be wonderful to involve Sustainable Steps. So just in this one little program, we've already got 4 organizations which have bonded and created this collaboration under this Terra Madre umbrella. And I think that's sort of indicative of how Terra Madre works. It just provides opportunities, and these are different around the world. It depends on the demographic and the local situations, but people use this tool and this umbrella to the best way that it suits them, and that's what's fantastic about it.
Thank you. And you have already answered my third question, by the way. So now comes the exciting part. I'm super excited to delve into cooking up dialogue now. And yeah, I mean, this just talk about how and why it started in the first place.
Okay. One of the things that we did discuss talking about before was Terra Madre in relation to the Cooking Up Dialogue project, how that merges. It's just not a sort of functional thing of us being here on this platform. It's also to do with the fact that there is a real sense of alignment, of a sort of organic, essential alignment in our goals. But yeah, as you said, I mean, it's really helpful if I explain what it is we do with Cooking Up Dialogue. So we can be described as a social gastronomy project. What we do is we bring women together, and when I use the word women for simplicity and form, but we also include fluid gender, non-binary and trans people under that name. So please forgive me for sticking with the simple term. And what we do is we bring people together to share a recipe and a story. And this is basically the foundation of our idea. Food is the catalyst and it's the icebreaker. But it also gives women the opportunity to tap into their memories, into their heritage, their traditions. It also connects us to the land and every part, every ingredient of the recipes. And it makes us feel really, present at the table, even if it's a metaphorical table, which in the case of our recent, pandemic-induced online sessions, it really it bonds us around this metaphorical table. So the really fascinating thing about the possibility to bring these women together is that they are different recipes, and we're bringing women together who are from different cultures with different heritages and different backgrounds and all kinds of differences, which I'll talk about later. But what the women see, what we all see also as the facilitators, we are privileged to be participants in this as well, is that these differences, instead of being a cause for conflict, or disagreement, they provide an incredible diversity and richness to the table. And that is really what we're working on as a sort of system, is to accentuate the richness of diversity and inclusion. So it's a great unifier. The Cooking Up Dialogue method is really a unifying method which celebrates diversity. And the simplicity of it is this: we all eat and we all have a story. So at the minute as I said, we're having to use online sessions, and that might seem to be a bit of a problem. Indeed, it is wonderful to be at an in-person session, because then you get to eat the incredible food. And that's fantastic. Obviously, we have an incredible array of tastes and dishes. Yeah, really, it's incredible.
Tasting
so we literally get
of it, right?
But
I mean, tasting delicious food should be just
absolutely
great in itself.
And from very different cuisines as well. I mean, some of them, we've had some of the dishes which we haven't had a chance to taste has been as far away as from Madagascar, or from Sudan, or from around the world. So when these dishes when we actually get a chance to eat them, that's going to be even more fantastic. But obviously the in-person sessions are very rewarding in that way. What we do is, as an organization, we fund the ingredients that the women provide for the dishes. And on the online sessions, we do the same thing. But obviously we don't get to share the food. They eat the dishes at home with their family. But what is interesting is that through the telling of the story and through the sharing, it's as if we, even in the online sessions, get to really sense that kind of taste, and certainly the feeling and the history behind the dish. So, luckily for us, we've found it to be really, really effective to host these sessions online. In fact, one of the participants, one of the Turkish participants, she remarked that she was really surprised that in just 4 online sessions with women who she had never met before in her life, that she felt so bonded with them. She was sharing with them, with all of us, things that she couldn't share with her own close family and friends. Other women have said at the end of the sessions that they found themselves to be more connected and aware. They've learned things about themselves, not just about the other women, but also about themselves, and that they've really bonded surprisingly deeply. So, you know, I think I'd like to touch slightly on the sort of the bigger scale as to why Cooking Up Dialogue has meaning within the Terra Madre, sort of, you know, under the umbrella of it.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a few things that we know. So the first thing we know is that, you know, everything is interrelated. Cooking Up Dialogue may seem just to be a social project about food heritage and that touches on human rights issues, you know. But as the environmental activist Satish Kumar says, he's famous for his book called Soil, Soul, Society. He links those three. He says that environmental justices and social justices are just two sides of the same coin. And that's pretty much what we're sensing, is that everything is connected to everything else, and Cooking Up Dialogue is very much in the center of creating those bridges. Secondly, what we know, what we've become really aware of recently with the pandemic, is what our priorities are. I think it's really drummed home the realization as to what we need to be looking at. In fact, I was watching a program with Kate Raworth speaking the other day. She's famous for her idea called donut economics. Yeah. Maybe for people who are watching in YouTube, because I'm mentioning some people, maybe in the links we can put links later if anybody's interested in.
Yeah, why not? I mean,
yeah. But what she remarked, it's very much was on my mind when she was saying it, is that the pandemic has caused collapse in certain sectors. But what it has made us realize is the absolute importance of certain sectors. For example, our food supply, you know, and food security, also essential workers, but also the women at home who maintain the family and who tend to the needs of family if we get sick. So everything else in society is almost a construct. It's not even real. It's certainly not essential to our survival. And it's almost a story that we've been telling ourselves. And that's an interesting sort of side point, is it's interesting to see how the stories that we tell ourselves become our reality, which is one of the things that we're very aware of in the Cooking Up Dialogue process. Is the importance of narrative, and we make a focus of that, of storytelling within the Cooking Up Dialogue experience.
So in a sense, I'm sorry to interrupt.
Yes, please do.
In a sense, you are deconstructing those narratives, right? Which creates sort of, or which have created that kind of hyper reality, which might not be the real one, as we have seen with the coming of pandemics, right? With the emergence of pandemics.
I think a lot of people around the world have been trying to do that for a long time, and are certainly making progress, let's say. But the pandemic was a shortcut to that in making us realize how much effectiveness that will have in creating deeper change. Remains to be seen. But what we are seeing is that people have realized what is important. So we know that everything is interrelated, that we are connected to the soil, and that we need the soil to be healthy. We need healthy food. We know all of that. We know what our priorities are, really, essentially. And thirdly, we also know a whole load of solutions. There are so many solutions out there. So if we're talking about food security, which is what the slow food movement is about, and if we're talking about a healthy food system, there are very many really effective ways of ensuring that on both small and large scale around the world. In fact, in Turkey, we have the Anatolian hub of the Savory Institute, which is, you know, a fantastic way of ensuring holistic land management. We also have traditional methods of farming and those small-scale producers, which Terra Madre is so, keen to accentuate. Mm-hmm. So we have these solutions, but and especially I think we're able to tap into them when we make a really conscious decision to step away from our colonial stance. So that's certainly something that we need to deconstruct, is that colonial stance and that colonial mindset. And when we really take a good look with respect and reverence at what is left of the indigenous wisdom and the methods and the traditional methods. And I think I'd like to open up a little bit of brackets here. I'm very aware, and it's certainly something that's very prominent among our team, to be aware that we can be seen to be speaking from a position of a white colonial position, and that we have this white savior mentality. It's something that we're very aware of. I cannot ignore that I'm sitting here certainly in a situation of privilege. But what we're doing through the Cooking Up Dialogue project is ensuring that we are opening up space for the voices of everybody, for the voices of the minorities. And through that, we can ensure wider participation and to, as you say, to deconstruct that colonial approach. That's something we're really aware of. Close brackets.
I mean, yeah, there are so many brackets opening in my mind.
I know.
Now, I don't even know how to formulate these things, because, I mean, what you said earlier was fascinating. You tap into the individual. It's not just about so normally what we consider with food security is something to do with national or international, right? A challenge, a problem. And now we can also see the interrelatedness of those things, so that's a project. What I hear from you is that it's a project that opens up the possibility to connect the dots in between those seemingly separate things. So that's great reading for me. I mean,
yes, I think that's a really good summary. What I would also add is that with those three things I talked about, as I said, we know we're interrelated. We know what the priorities are, and in fact, quite often what the problems are. And we also have the solutions at our fingertips. But there is something stopping us from activating that. And what I'm finding across the board is that these solutions are not coming into fruition because we are confronted with some kind of polarization. There is always something that it stops the decision making from getting to the actual doing, or there is some invested interests which block it. And it could be the way that we're politically structured. It could be the way that we're dominated by the mega corporations. There's all kinds of reasons that stop us from moving ahead and from connecting and from bridging that gap. And what that gap needs to do is, it doesn't need to even reinvent something. It needs to just to be bridged so that what we know turns into what we actually start to do. Mm-hmm. So what Cooking Up Dialogue is about is trying to share the tools and the skill sets, and also promote the attitude of collaboration towards building those bridges, which is exactly what I think you called it a bridge at the beginning when we first started talking. Yeah.
I mean, yeah, we communicate with each other, right? We have all those tools and all the platforms to enable the communication to become faster and more effective. But still, there's this something that's so. Actually, this is what sustainability is about. I mean, there are lots of problems, lots of challenges all around the world, and there are great minds which come up with great, solutions as well. But the problem is we can't just bring them together. We can't just make it maybe work on a more global scale. So
that's exactly how the Cooking Up Dialogue project started. It was sensing this gap. Mm-hmm. In fact, what happened is the Dutch embassy funded a project which, and I'll have to read it because I always forget, it's to support influential civil society, activists, and to create systemic change through the power of diversity. That's a quote. So they started this project, and within that, we created a subgroup of 6 of us. So we are the six co-founding women of Cooking Up Dialogue. And we adopted sort of more specific intentions, which were to bridge this gap. And to do that, we realized that certain things were essential. So in the meantime, we need resilient communities. We need communities that have a collaborative mindset. And we were thinking on the small scale, because unless you feel secure in your community, then it's harder to expand outwards. We need to overcome polarization. And when I say we, all of us, the whole planet, we need to face the issue of othering and within communities and on the grander scale. We really need to empower women, the voice of the feminine. We need to invoke the idea of nurturance culture, which is an incredible separate session. We'll talk about that another time, maybe, I hope. But even if it's not specifically named, the sense of it, of a culture of nurturance, has to rise. We need people to have better understanding of the others in their community, to reduce marginalization, to understand that when we have a balance in our communities with the minority groups, it's just like the balance that we need in the soil, and it's the balance that we need in the biosphere. We need it everywhere. And it's when we have cohesion, we stop the possibility for conflict, and we create the possibility for collaboration, and therefore going back to that bridge to create it. And to do that, we needed to create a safe space and a method to do all of this. And what we hoped would be a sort of a greater scale effect is that we will be positively impacting the basic human rights of everybody who had contact with this, because what we're hoping that we're doing is to empowering people to own their identities, whatever it is, and to be able to be, outwardly proud of whatever their identity is. We want to also promote things like access to good, healthy food and water, and as I said, cohesion in communities. We can actually call these all quite lofty goals. I mean, it's quite a lot for 6 women and a small budget to achieve, obviously. But one thing that comes to mind, and I think, when we're talking about sort of looking basic human rights and looking after the rights of minorities, or talking about food security, it sounds like we're talking specifically about one particular group or certain groups, vulnerable groups, let's say. But what comes up for me is that, so, if we feel like this project doesn't apply to us, that maybe we don't feel marginalized or vulnerable. In fact, it is relevant to us, because with what's happening with climate change, the world is changing around us. We do not have to be a migrant to experience the upheaval and the potentially upcoming devastation that these people are presently experiencing. So I think
ecological anxiety, right?
Yeah. The pandemic, of course, has given us a little bit of a sense of that. What happens when things are just out of line that we expect it to go in? So it's a very sobering thought to realize that the degree of change that is coming our way, that we expect to affect society and the food systems and everything that we rely on, actually. So everybody is vulnerable, and nobody exempt from this. So bearing that in mind, we kind of compacted down these ideas of what we wanted to achieve into something that was manageable, micro, and kind of intimate and familiar. So what we do is we deliberately bring 2 groups of women who are specifically polarized, or at least quite different from different groups. And we specifically choose the others for whatever aspect of their identity, so that people can have a chance to open up their eyes to new cultures and the difference, and have a chance to confront the prejudices that they might carry. And what is wonderful, that no matter how different the group, there is always, without fail, there is always a story that bonds the women. At least one story, if not 10, but you know.
And I'm so curious to hear about those stories. That's my favorite question, you know.
Okay, well,
I'd like to drop in a kind reminder for our audience, you know. So please, and thank you for watching us, first of all, and please feel free to drop in any questions you might have in mind on the chat box on YouTube. Thank you. And yeah, I mean, and I can see you are already tapping into some SDGs already, right? Like, for example, I can feel and I can hear your naming SDG, for example, 10, which is reduced inequalities, and SDG 5, gender equality, SDG 3, good health and well-being, and so many others. So, and it's also, you know, the SDGs might provide a good framework for what you have been telling us.
Yeah, I mean, I think I didn't mention the full scope of the different variety of people that we're together with. I think I'll get a chance to mention that a little bit when I'm talking about the groups that we've worked with. But certainly there is a huge amount of diversity. So one of the core SDGs that we're working with is I think is number 10, which is to reduce inequalities. So that's pretty self-evident. But what is more important to I think, or at least we're most in alignment with, is the gender equality SDG and the rights of women. Of course, it does come up in sessions. You know, we've had subjects like child marriage, forced marriage. We've had domestic workload inequalities. We've had domestic abuse and lack of equal rights to education for women and girls. And all these kind of things have actually come up in our sessions, again, depending on the demographic of the group. So these are things we're literally dealing with and that we give a voice to. And I think that's something that is extremely important, is to underline that it's really one of our main goals to empower women, but not just for the women, but for the entirety of society, because we know that we need the wisdom of the feminine, of women within our society to emerge at a higher level so that it can actually be useful. It has been so dreadfully oppressed for centuries. So in empowering women, this isn't something we're just doing for half the population. It's something we're doing for the entirety of the population. And that's something which I hope everybody knows about, that particular SDG goal. I mean, yeah, we are in alignment. I think, I mean, when you think about our approach and the way we move through this system, that we kind of tap into a lot of the SDGs. So for example, one of the things that comes up in every single session is the way that we feel we're eco-conscious, and we try to adhere to the zero waste principles. But maybe it's not our main goals, but certainly on the micro level, we're always talking about sustainable farming. We're talking about agriculture. We're talking about food security, seeds, plants, irrigation, pollution. We're talking about the pandemic, global changes. We're talking about poverty, for example. And that's actually something that has come up in some of our sessions where members of our group are suffering from poverty. Human rights, labor rights. I don't know, I think we kind of tap into almost every single one of the SDGs, more or less, by at least the subject matter. Sorry.
As each of them is interrelated, I mean, all of them are interrelated, right? As we talked before, because problems are interrelated. So you can't separate one from the another. I mean, like time flies away. So I wish we had like hours. And I mean, before just passing to the questions from our audience, I'd like to hear some of the interesting anecdotes you might want to share with us, with our audience, regarding Cooking Up Dialogue today. That would be a great
I'd love to. I mean, you know, first of all, I mean, if we look at the groups so far that we've had, they've been so wide and so fascinating. So I just want to give you a little glimpse as to who we've been talking to so far, and it's available. People can see you can see the recipes and some of the stories, some of the selected stories on the website, and also on our Instagram accounts. So to delve a bit deeper, but to give you an idea, we of course work with local Turkish women of different ethnic backgrounds, but also from the rural and the urban situation. We have people from foreign women who live in Istanbul. So we've had women from Syria, Russia, Ecuador, Madagascar, Sudan, Egypt. We've also had women from around the world, from Scotland and from South Africa. So we've touched a few continents there. We have women who are neurodiverse, women from the LGBTQI community. We have people who are gender fluid or non-binary. We've had women of color, white, black, women with master's degrees, women who haven't gone to school. I mean, we have women who are neurodiverse and differently abled. It's really a wonderful scope. So within that, we've got the most fantastic stories and recipes. And as I said, I'm trying to upload them onto the website so you get a chance to try them at home. But there's one general anecdote I'd like to share. And that is, I think that everybody feels when they were a little bit surprised as to the sense of the fact that we needed this in our lives, is kind of the general thing. We didn't know that we were lacking these connections. We didn't know how much we needed them. And so that's something that seems to come out of every single session. One of the anecdotes I could share is that we grouped Syrian migrant women with their Turkish neighbors. And they realized that they most definitely had passed each other on the street because they were literally neighbors, or they had possibly even bumped into each other in the local market, but they would have not looked at each other. They would have possibly even averted their gaze, certainly ignored each other. But now they're really enthusiastic, as soon as the pandemic is over, to get together and to continue sharing, having a conversation, and that to hear that bond has been formed is really beautiful. It's really inspiring. So every experience is different. What we're finding is that the women are kind of almost not just in the room carrying their own identity. It's almost that as they put the food on the table, they're tapping into their ancestral heritage. Some of the recipes literally have come from grandmother down to granddaughter. And so the women are not just connecting with each other. It's almost like we're connecting on a wider scale, outside of ourselves and back in history, and also towards the future, because as is the Terra Madre's motto, we're thinking about our future in trying to live sustainably, as you know.
In a sense, it's also intergenerational, because they share their grandmother's recipes and their stories as well.
Exactly. And the other thing is that the food itself is connecting us to the land as we speak. I mean, one of the things that came up was and it's come up in quite a few, certainly in the rural areas, where the dish that is served on the table has come from the seeds that are heritage seeds that were planted by them in the garden. And they have stories of how, when their children were babies, how they would carry their babies on their back and lay them down under the shade of a branch of a tree while they tended to the crops. And it's these seeds that are being bought, the heritage seeds that have been brought to the table, and I'm eating the produce of these seeds that have come from all these years. So I mean, when you experience that, it's a really rich thing. But this sense that this sense of connection and this sense of collaboration and bonding is so powerful, but it's so easily divided up. You get the sense that there is an incredible amount of power in these bonds, which is underutilized. And what happened in one session, it was one of our very first sessions, And this, you would have loved to have been their group. There was the most incredible nettle börek, so that's ısırgan otu börek. You should see the pastry on that was like paper thin. It was amazing.
I like all kinds of börek, so yeah.
Oh, it was fabulous. So delicious. And so the ladies had all put a different dish on the table. And a wonderful woman from the ethnically Bosnian community, she said, okay, so let's see now, who among us are you going to give the most points for their dish? And it was just such a perfect example of how culturally we're really, pushed towards competitiveness. It's on the TV, it's everywhere. I believe that's a kind of example of something that's on like a typical TV show that a lot of people watch.
So I think we might be having a little bit of a connection problem right now. Jodie, are you with me?
We'd have gone extinct by now. We are. Did we lose the connection?
Yeah, I think so. We did, yeah. But now you're back.
Losing.
So maybe we can just keep track of the last few sentences, and
That's a shame. I was talking about how. Did you hear me say about the woman asking about the whether we were going to give points for the dishes? Did you hear that bit?
I think you should go back like 1 or 2 sentences before that. And now we are experiencing some technical problems. Oopsie. So
we're really cutting out here.
So now I can hear you, but I can't see you.
Are we back?
Now better. Yeah, definitely better.
Oh, okay, we're back. Okay, cool. Just making sure nothing else was on in the house.
Sorry, and also we need to make sure that
that's the joys of COVID chats.
Yeah, that's one disadvantage. And also, I mean, I really love to hear the story, but we also need to have some time for the Q&A session. So
cool. If we have questions, let's go for it.
No, please finish the story first. I'm really curious to hear about it.
Well, I mean, I think the story is just that we often are asked, or in this particular case, we were asked to judge which was the best dish. And as I pointed out, that what we're here for is to accentuate each other, to look out for each other's needs and to see where we can support each other and to collectively empower each other, not to push members of our gender or of any member of society in any way down. And that was a beautiful opportunity to explain that. And from within that group, there was a lady who, for example, her entire life, she'd never had a birthday celebration. And for all the years that she was alive, she'd never had a birthday cake. So, we have these plans, and it's a goal to bake her a fabulous cake and share that with her at the first opportunity. So, I mean, there's so many things I could share, but I think we should get on to the questions.
So we have this question, and they are asking, now comes my paraphrasing skills and wrapping up skills, I think. They are asking how you choose the participants for these gatherings.
Okay, well, we've specifically targeted different groups. I did mention some of the diversity. And what we do is we try and work together. And in fact, I was going to talk about that is for our future goals is to work together with local CSO who represent various demographics within the community. So, at the minute we're looking specifically to support the marginalized, but to balance them with other members of society. So I think that it's fair to say that people could get it if you're interested in joining, or to learn how to become a facilitator as well. And that's something that I haven't had a chance to share, but it's one thing that we're very keen to do is to make this it's open source. So our tools and our skills are going to be more and more accessible through the next batch of funding to produce a Cooking Up Dialogue guidebook and to share that. So people will be able to start their own Cooking Up Dialogue facilitation. We hope to provide training for that. But maybe if somebody's very keen to join and has something they'd like to share, then they can contact me through the email on the website.
Yeah, so we have two more questions, and I think we have found a person who wants to become a part of your project. Chef Bel Pinto is asking, as a chef and sustainability trainer, she asks whether she can contribute in any way.
That's wonderful. Yeah, especially, but not when we're doing it online. Absolutely not. It has to be when we're in person, because I want to try some of Chef Sibel's wonderful food. So that's my only condition. But yeah, definitely. Let's look at it. It will be wonderful to collaborate. And yeah, definitely.
And Eda is asking if it's possible to find the stories on the website, you know, other than
some of the stories are. Yeah, we obviously have to get approval. In some cases, we haven't shared the photographs of the participants because they have preferred it to be that way. Online, when we've been online, we tend to just have a screenshot, which is always a little bit, you know, it's a bit lacking. But hopefully we'll be able to update the website after we get together with some of the groups that we've only been able to see online. But photographs, stories, and recipes, virtually all of the recipes are they're not up to date, I have to admit. There's several that are waiting, but there are stories. Plus, so one of the stories that's waiting in the wings is about inclusion, specifically from the perspective of a non-binary person. So I'm very excited to share that soon. And now, because of the way the website works, I'm sharing them more in the blog. So in the blog section, there are quite a few different things emerging.
So they want to try it, they want to eat the food, they want to share, and they want to be a part of the project. So this is what I can see in our chat box right now,
wow.
Which is
amazing. That's a lot of wants.
Thank you. Yeah. Now we need to, I mean, we are coming to the end, unfortunately, as I said before. I mean, I wish we had like hours. And so what are your, like, what do you want to say more? Any final remarks?
Yeah, I mean, I really would like to talk a lot about the tools that we use, because I think they're so useful. People can use them not just in these kind of environments, but also they can be marriage saving tools, they can be relation building tools, they can be, as I said, they're useful across the board. They can be used in the boardroom. So that's very important. And so what I would like to suggest is that people, join us as a facilitator. You know, at least learn how to use curated questions, which is one of our major tools. Learn about hosting circle. These are extremely useful. Pay attention to where your food comes from and the stories of food. Eat intentionally and embody the experience, really, you know, sense into it. And my last remarks, I think, is to remain curious. Be curious, activate your heart when it comes to other people, other dishes, anything. Remembering our connections, irrespective of who we are, of where we come from, however different we may seem, whatever it is that seems to hold us apart. When we remember that at the essence, we're actually all the same, that's such an important thing. And that's what Cooking Up Dialogue is about. And building those bridges. So anybody who'd like to join us in that journey is very welcome.
Yeah, thank you, Jodie, for being with us today and informing us on Cooking Up Dialogue project. I mean, I'm pretty sure what you told us today, you know, relates to many of us in many ways. And I hope we're living with our takeaways and to take the very first step, you know, towards a more sustainable way of life. So, and before closing the session, I'd also personally like to thank all members of the Sustainability Steps Association, Emrah Doğa, my family and friends for all the support, all their support, and thank you all, our audience, for taking the time to watch our program, and thank you for your out-of-the-box questions. So as I mentioned before, Sustainable Steps Association is looking forward to hearing from all organizations to collaborate on a more global scale in order to contribute to solutions worldwide. So we are hoping to meet you all in our next program. Thank you.